Today I'm going to show you how I painted this picture in Procreate 4. Hi everyone, Steve Elliott here again with another painting, this time in Procreate. I am trying to mix it up a bit, do a few in Procreate, do a few in Art Rage and so on. So I'm not sort of just staying with one app, and some people will want to see Art Rage and some will want to see Procreate. Anyway, let's get down to the painting. There's a few things I want to talk about today. And the first is composition, I suppose, and distilling a scene. And I want to talk about using photographs, I suppose. So I was sat in this lounge taking this photo, and there was a couple of other people in the room, and they're saying, "Why are you taking a photo with the window behind you? You've got the light behind you. It's wrong, you shouldn't be doing that." And I said, I'm not taking this photo to use the photo. I'm taking it because I like the composition and I'm going to use it in a painting. And having light behind you in a painting is not a bad thing, like it is, having light in front of you and behind the subject in a painting isn't a bad thing, like it is in a photograph. So that's the first thing. I'm sort of breaking that photographic rule of putting the light behind me, because it puts an halo around the main subject and it can become really moody and dramatic, and it can be used to good effect. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, as soon as I took this photo, I pretty much knew what I wanted from it. I knew exactly how the painting was going to work, and I could see it in my head. Sometimes you have to work at it a bit and you're thinking, can I get something out of this? And sometimes you just know straight away. So this painting was really easy to paint. I did it in 4 hours, which is pretty fast for a sort of a finished painting for me. Usually it can be double that time. If I'm doing the sketchings and the small watercolors and demos and things like that, they only take like an hour or so. But this is a proper painting, and it only took 4 hours because I knew exactly where I was going with it and what I wanted to do. And what I wanted was some sort of geometric shapes on there. So I've gone with this really vivid pink colour, which is very similar to the actual table. I like that, and I thought I want that as a sort of a major thing in the painting, in the foreground. And I like this sort of dark blue column and the cut out window shape. They all were important to the composition. And then that left the sort of cream coloured rectangle behind the flowers. So I've sort of got this sort of idea of geometric shapes, all placed on the thirds, I suppose, or the golden mean, or however you want to work it out. But it's sort of placed in a pleasing way, and that's exactly what I knew I wanted to do. And I wanted these flowers. They were actually bought for Valentine's. They weren't to do with the baby's homecoming, but I thought I would suggest in the painting that they are some flowers to welcome the baby home. So that was the idea there. So there's two things that I was going to put detail in, was just a few of the flowers, and my partner, the very lovely Special K, who's holding the baby. I thought this made a really cool composition. Then the other thing is, there's a lot of clutter in this photograph. Now, you do not have to paint everything as it is. So I dismissed the settee with all of the coats and things that are on it. I didn't want that in there. There's a footstool in there. That had to go. There's a little disc cup, like an old record. There's a drip mat on the table. They had to go. There's an iPad there. That had to go. Just stripped it right down to the elements that I wanted in this painting. And here you can see I was messing about putting that sort of glass piece in the table, and even that had to go. I found that distracting, and I didn't want that in there either. So I began with this sort of, as I always do, sort of blocking in the main shapes and then sort of progressing from there. The bright pink colour that I've used in the table in the foreground, I know that is a dominant colour, and I needed to bring that into the painting rather than just have this sort of cerise table dominating everything. So I'm very much aware of that, and it doesn't happen for quite a while, but later on I sample that colour with the colour sampling tool thing, and then I'm just writing it on the screen there, the brushes I use to remind me later on. Anyway, back to the point. I pick up that pink, and then I put little accents of it in the roses and sort of reflecting off the clothes of the lady and the baby, just to sort of tie the old composition together. So I do that. And the other thing I do, I'm starting now to get into detail into the characters in the painting, the people who it's about. You can argue this painting's about the roses, or you can argue it's about the baby and the lady, but for me it's definitely the baby and the sort of affection and love that's there. That's the story that I'm trying to tell, I suppose. So there's only two bits of detail that I really go into with any great depth, and that's the face, the baby, the clothes of the baby, and by the time I've got to the shirt underneath the baby, they're just putting as sort of almost abstract brush strokes, and the legs are left really as I don't touch them again, because they're not really relevant to the painting. It's all about the fondness that's being shown there, and the gentleness of holding the baby. That's where I'm coming from with this painting, and the roses act as a frame to that, I guess. So although they're dominant, they definitely complement the scene and add to it. They're not a distraction. Well, I don't think they are anyway. So the face took quite a while, just because I was sort of working on trying to get a bit of a lightness. And quite often when I'm working here, you can see I crop the photo so I can zoom in on it, and if I can get it sort of very similar size to what I'm working on with the paint, that helps a lot, because I can just look at the two images and compare them very close and think, yeah, I'm on the right lines, or I'm not. I can see here that the glasses, there we are, just rubbed that out, was a little bit round at the bottom and it needed squaring off somewhat. And I can sort of get the shapes in better, and all of the shadows, I can just see it so much better. And I've said before, my loose style of painting, I don't need a really high res photograph to work from. I'm quite happy to work with something that's quite blurred like this, because I'm not doing sort of a really detailed photo like image that you see a lot of people do. That's not where I'm at all. So I can get away with using snapshots. I did struggle with the sort of proportions of the chin. You can see it's way too small at the minute, and the head, the forehead's huge. So I did mess around and resizing it, and I got the size of the mouth wrong. I did this sort of tiny mouth, and you can see it should go almost to the end of the glasses, and it doesn't. So that needed adjusting a bit further along. And it took me quite a while. I don't know why. A top lip is way too long at this point. The chin is tiny. You can see just everything is quite cartoon-like, really, I suppose. And then I start to adjust that to get it something like. And it's not until that I adjust the mouth to get the proportions of that right that it really starts to come together for me. Looks quite sort of withered there. So I sort of got rid of the huge forehead and just softening off. I like the way that you can just sort of highlight and select an object and then just reduce it in size. Saves a lot of repainting. That is one of the things that I really like about digital painting, that you can do that. I should talk about the brushes that I used in this, because I've moved away. I thought I want to try something different. I use all the other oil paintings I've done in Procreate. I've used the turpentine brush and the oil paint brush. So I went through every single brush that there was in Procreate, and I chose 2 new brushes that to use, and I didn't make any adjustments to them whatsoever. I didn't change the size, or usually I go in and make it so I can use them a lot bigger, but I didn't change these at all. I kept them exactly the same, and the brushes that I used was the membrane brush, which is in the abstract folder, and I used that as to get on all of the first big blocks of colour. So the initial cream colour that I put on, the blue column, the roses, and all of those things. So the initial washes, I went in and used the membrane brush, which is in the abstract folder. And then I went to the artistic folder to get the Gesinki, I think it is, Gesinki ink brush. And I did the bulk of the painting with that. And what I really liked about that is I could set that into the, or select it as the brush in the smudge tool. And when you use that over the paint, it looked like you dragged a dry brush through the paint. And that gave it a really nice, you could get really soft edges that weren't blended together, because I'm not big into blending. I don't like to see things smoothed out too much. I think it can look overworked, but I like the way you could get soft edges simply by using the brush to drag it over the edges, and you can see that quite clearly over the sort of blue column that I've painted in there. And the third brush I used, I went back to the old faithful oil paint brush, and I used that right at the end of the painting just to put in some final detail into certain places. So just to go over that again, the 3 brushes I used was the membrane brush, and that was for the initial painting. That can be found in the abstract folder. Then I changed over to the Gesinki ink brush, which can be found in the artistic folder, and I use that for the bulk of the painting and for the sort of the dry scrubbing effect using the smudge tool and also the oil paint brush. So here you can see I've pretty much finished Special K, and I'm just sort of going into the second hand now. I've sort of worked on the baby's clothes, and I love the looseness of his cardigan. It's just sort of almost abstract, but it's caught the light, and I really was taken with that. I got that really quick, so I didn't mess around with it. The hands, this one I did change quite a lot, because I felt it was the fingers were really long. If you look at them now, this sort of monster talon like things that needed changing. So by putting the actual photograph right next to it, you can see it's really easy to see what you're doing and compare it. Compares the word I'm looking for. And the other cool thing is, of course, is because it's all on the iPad and you're looking at it, if you wear glasses like me, I only need glasses for close-up work. I've got really good vision for distant stuff. So if I'm working on a real landscape, I'm forever like taking my glasses off, putting them back on, taking them off, putting them on. And it's a nightmare. But on the iPad, you don't have to do that. You can just focus and continue on the painting. So that is another advantage, I suppose, of the digital media, that you can get your source photo right next to it, and you're not having to refocus on things. And it's made it so much easier that I don't have to sketch things out and make sure they're in the right place, because it's so easy to do just by putting the photo right next to what you're painting. Layer wise on this painting, I didn't have many. I created an initial layer where I put the cream colour on. I locked that as I normally do. I then created another layer, and I made a bit of a mistake here because I painted the blue band of the wall on that layer, and I also painted the pink coffee table and the flowers all on the same layer, which made it difficult to put the characters on another layer, and I couldn't sandwich them in between the wall and the coffee table. So I suppose I could have duplicated the coffee table and wall layer and cut out what I didn't want, but I didn't. I just continued working the best as I could, and worked with the people on a layer that was above the blue column, but also above the table. So if I adjusted things, I was sort of erasing on the table. So I should have made an extra layer for that, really. So that was it. I had the layer for the flowers, the layer for the people, the layer for the initial background. I created a layer for the signature later on, and that was pretty much it, I think. Now look at the technique I'm using here on the clothes, on the shirt that she's wearing, and that's as far as I go with the detail in the shirt, I believe. Nowhere near as much detail as in the actual character, because it doesn't need it. Your eye can fill in all of those gaps, or your mind can fill in all of those gaps. I put a bit more detail in the baby clothes, and in some respects I think I overworked them, and I should have gone back in and softened them up a bit. It took me saying it's just a baby's leg in a baby grow, it seemed to take me ever to paint this bit. So not my favourite bit of the painting, and I think I could go back into it and change it slightly. You see, I've got the shape of the foot wrong there, so I clearly wasn't looking at the source material or the photo to get that shape. I was just sort of concentrating on the painting and not really looking at what I was doing. I don't know, I can't even remember if I changed that to get it. I think, yeah, it's getting something like now, which I'm pleased about. So the legs, it does seem a little bit overworked, and I'm blending and pushing colour around, and compared to the shirt, which you can see are just sort of really not random strokes but very loose strokes put on with a lot of confidence, that's not happening in that bit of the child's pants there. It looks a lot more laboured. So I keep going over it and working it and going over it again. So I don't know. That's the only bit that I'm not really pleased with. So here you can see I'm starting to pick up the other colours and put them in there as a reflection. So the sort of colours off his shirt, and bringing these pinks in. I even go even more pink than that a bit later on. Here I'm sort of getting a bit looser with the colour and just sort of putting in brush strokes, which is I'm much happier with. And then the table, at some point I'm thinking it needs to be bigger. I just felt that the people and the flowers was just too far apart. So I think I've already done it actually. I've made it a little bit bigger. At this point, I'd failed to record the actual screen, and this is the Procreate dump that I used, or the recording feature in Procreate, just to show you the finishing touches. You notice how I use the pink now. I picked that up and put that in the roses, and I'm also putting it on the side of the clothes and the hair. And then I move Special K along a little bit just to finish off the composition. And that is it. That is the finished painting. I hope you've enjoyed that. I certainly enjoyed painting it. It's one of my favourite paintings that I've done for a long while. Thanks for staying with me till the end. If you've enjoyed this video, as always, a big thumbs up would help me out a lot and it'd be much appreciated. And also, if you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I have lots of videos all about digital painting and I would love to be sharing those with you. So hopefully I will see you in the next one. Bye.